Hello and welcome to Piano Shack with me, Woody. Thank you ever so much for tuning in. Now, some of you will probably remember when I did a demo of Native Instruments Electric Sunburst. This is their virtual Les Paul electric guitar, which does strummed patterns and arpeggios and riffs for you. It's really rather nice. But I did get a few comments along the lines of, well, why don't you just get a real guitarist to play for you and record that instead? And I get that. I'm a guitarist myself, and I suppose you could say the same thing about virtual drums, horns, strings, and bass guitars. But I'm a guitarist myself, not an especially good one, but it gave me an idea for an interesting and fun challenge that we're going to do today. So I have a copy of Native Instruments STRUMMED ACOUSTIC 2, which is a virtual acoustic guitar software instrument. And I also have one of these. This is a real, out of tune acoustic guitar, which I can badly play. But I do have some recording equipment, and if I play some basic chords, then probably we can do an interesting comparison between the ease of use and the sound of a virtual software acoustic guitar and the real thing. So that's the plan for today. We'll compose a little track with bass, drums and piano, and then I'll record two versions of the same guitar part, one on the virtual guitar and then one with me trying to recreate exactly the same sound and technique and performance on the real acoustic guitar. And this will answer the question once and for all, why don't you just record a real acoustic guitar? Maybe we should tune it first. Okay, so let's get rid of this layer of dust. To be honest, I haven't played this guitar for over a year, so I'm pretty rusty, and the guitar is pretty dusty. Look at that, I'm a poet. In this box somewhere, I've got some fancy guitar polish. There you go. I'm sure it's vastly superior to a regular polish. It certainly was more expensive. If you are curious about the guitar, then I can tell you that it is a Fender CD60 Western guitar, very inexpensive but plays and sounds fine. Well, the action is a bit high and the intonation sounds weird when you play a G chord, but it's good enough for me. I've got a few different microphones in my mic locker. Now the dynamic mics are an option. I've got a couple in the bag here and also the one I am talking into right now. But I do believe it's more common to use a condenser. I have this USB large diaphragm condenser microphone that I use occasionally. I think though that a device like this Zoom micro recorder is a better choice. It's something that many guitarists and bands have in their possession. It's cheap, very inexpensive. This is about $100 and it has a pair of condenser mics to capture the sound in stereo, and it's got great preamps. It sounds really quite fantastic. Okay, I'm going to use an app called iStrobosoft to tune up my guitar. It makes the task very easy. They also make some of the best hardware tuners as well, so they probably know what they're doing, and this is a great app. Let's play through a few songs and see if we can find something that I can actually play half decently anyway. Hopefully you will get an idea about what tune to use for this demonstration and test. Here's a Swedish pop song, very popular. Anybody know what it is? Let me know in the comments. No, oh dear. These chords are a little bit too tricky for me. Fingerpicking arpeggios is pretty nice, but it's not something I really want to do today, even though the software Strummed Acoustic does have some really nice arpeggio patterns. Yeah, this one does have a couple of tricky chords, but I think I can pull it off and it might fit the bill. I'll play it with a plectrum. It's a traditional Swedish folk song, and if anybody recognises it, then again let me know in the comments. Thanks. The old beard is looking a bit scruffy there, Woody. You might want to trim that up a touch after you've finished the video. Now then, it's time to play the same song on the software plugin, but as I was attempting to do that, I realised I couldn't remember the chords. They came naturally to me on the guitar, but not so much on the keyboard. So let's write down the chords now. And there are your chords in case you're interested. Okay, let's try and figure out how this plugin works and how to voice these various guitar chords on the MIDI keyboard. First of all though, let's just try and find a pattern that fits the rhythm and the style of the music that I have in mind. I'll play you a high quality version in a minute with some audio I captured on my sound card, so don't worry. So we're going through the process here of trying out some presets. Somewhat tedious, but at the same time, quite good fun. It's impressive how good this plugin sounds. Just realised that the song I chose is a waltz in 3/4 and 99% of the patterns here are in 4/4. That was a bit of a dumb choice, and you can't play the guitar like a solo instrument. You can't play the strings, the virtual strings yourself. You have to choose from pre-played patterns. So it's a case of going through the presets until you find something that's close-ish. This one is in 3/4, but not quite what I'm looking for. Okay, this one is not exactly what I had in mind, but beggars can't be choosers. It's close enough. Let's record it to a track. Whoops, I forgot to change the time signature to 3/4. This is probably the one setting in Reaper that I've never ever changed before. Let's try again. The timing of the ending was completely off. It is a bit tricky to play these riffs when the plugin holds the pattern for a few beats or bars. You can configure that, but otherwise it was fine, and I got it on the first take. Let's adjust the position of the final strum. I accidentally dragged it to another note and didn't notice, which confused me immensely for a little while. I'm adjusting it here. Yep, that'll do. Let's move on to the bass guitar. This time I will use another Kontakt library for this called SCARBEE Pre-Bass. I really enjoy playing this one. Oop, fluffed it up there a little bit. I think I can do better. Let's try again. Got it that time, that was good enough. I won't bother quantizing or editing it. This is fine and will leave in some of the human feeling. I do need an instrument to play the melody. I'll use another one of my favourites. This is CORDA, also for Kontakt. This is the default init preset. There is a nicer one in here somewhere. Yeah, that's the one. Here it is. We nailed it on the first take. Awesome. Let's move on to the final track we're going to add today. Apart from the real acoustic guitar, we're going to add some drums. I think this 60s drum kit will be ideal. I could play in something myself, but I usually get better results by dragging in a groove from the available MIDI clips. So let's do that today. But first we have to find one. And here again, I'm kicking myself for choosing 3/4 as it limits me to a small number of patterns. I'm struggling to find any of them here. There's no filter as far as I can see, so we're just going to have to look for 3/4 in the name. Yep, that's pretty good. I'll drag in a couple of variations of this groove onto my timeline and then move them around to fit with the structure of the song. We need a little flourish to end the track. Something like this, perhaps? Perfect! Now then, let's record the mediocre hardware guitar version of the guitar track. So I've clamped my little Zoom to the table and we're ready to go. I did record a half a dozen takes, more or less. All of them were pretty awful, but I picked the one that was least bad and then dragged it into Reaper. So I think we're done. Let me play you first the song with the Strummed Acoustic 2 virtual guitar. And now, the same song with the real guitar, warts and all. And just for giggles, while we're at it, let's take a listen to the same track performed by Band in a Box. So then, you might be wondering, what did we actually learn from this exercise, apart from the realization that I'm actually a pretty incompetent guitarist? But that, I think, is part of the test, since many of us, piano players and music producers, may not be fantastically skilled on guitar. There's no guarantee of that anyway. You can see myself as your typical average piano player who can do a little bit of guitar, which I think is pretty good for this test. I'll let you judge for yourselves which song sounds the best, although I have to say, in my opinion, even though my performance was flawed, I thought that in the mix it sounded fine. I'll go out on a limb here and say that I preferred my version to the plugin. It was real, it had character, variety, and a human touch that was somewhat missing in the plugin. I mean, it sounds awesome for sure, but it does sound somewhat more robotic and repetitive than a real player. I thought the plugin would be an easier and quicker way to put down a guitar track, but to my surprise, this was not exactly the case. There was a lot of faffing around in the plugin, trying to find a suitable pattern, figuring out how to play what I had in mind on the keyboard, getting the right effects at the end and in the introduction, editing the sound, for example, and editing the MIDI to get everything lining up correctly. In contrast, recording the real performance on the real guitar was a lot simpler than I imagined. It took very little time to set up the zoom and record the take. Getting a clean and decent sounding recording was also very easy. Another thing, with a virtual instrument, I had to compromise and settle on a pattern that was close to what I had in mind. You can't record your own patterns on the software instrument. You have to choose from the available hundreds of patterns, which is somewhat tedious, and you end up settling on something that's close to what you wanted. Whereas on the guitar, I could play exactly what I had in mind, exactly what I wanted. And also, it's a lot easier to get the groove right. When you're combining the virtual guitarist and the virtual drummer, it's impossible or a lot of work to get them to swing and groove together. Whereas if you're playing it for real, you can really lock in the timing and get into the pocket there. Another aspect that you might not have considered is that it's actually your playing that's being captured in the song and not a sample of somebody else or some virtual player. It's a lot more satisfying and rewarding, I think, to have captured your performance, your emotions and your feeling, even if it's not perfect. But ask yourself, where do you draw the line? I played a sampled bass instrument here, even though I do have a real one, and I probably should re-record that track in the future. I used a drum loop, as you saw, and a sampled drum kit. Should I have gone somewhere who has a real drum kit and mic'd that one up and perhaps played it myself or got a drummer to do it? I think ultimately it depends on your preferences and your capabilities. There is no right or wrong answer here. It's entirely up to you. I think it's an interesting debate, and this one dates back to the introduction of the drum machine, the synth, and the sampler. Yeah, I hope you agree that was somewhat interesting. It certainly got me thinking. Probably next time I'll ask one of my skilled guitarist friends to come over and play the track for me, or we could have even invited one of my viewers to record and send in the track that we could have used. In fact, that would have been a great idea, and I'll remember that for the future. Well, I do hope you enjoyed that and found it somewhat entertaining and informative. Do write a comment and let me know one way or the other. Thanks also to Native Instruments for giving me a demo license so that we could make this video. As always then, thank you ever so much for watching, liking, subscribing, commenting, sharing, and I'll see you again in the next video. Until then, cheerio.